All right. Welcome to the Catalyst Way, where we have conversations around unleashing the power of purpose and meaning to fuel to fuel transformative change in yourself and for others. And today's session is going to be an interesting one on one of the newest activities I created called this personal, I'm drawing a blank.
Identity.
Identity. Yes, personal identity. Um, and I think we'll just go into it. And as we go into it, I'll talk about how I came up with it and what I hope to do with it and et cetera, et cetera. So today's challenge for Ivor was to come up with his personal identity. And basically the challenge was, can you describe you, how you show up in the world and how you want other people to see you in two words or two phrases. So, first, I would like for him to explain where we got the idea.
So we got the idea from the Jamie Winship's book, Living Fearlessly. And based on the way that he chose to describe himself, is how our conversation transpired. And we ended up leading into you coming away from it and falling on this activity that you termed personal identity. And how he chose to term himself, it actually escapes me right now. Not sure I can't remember it.
Militant peacekeeper.
Militant peacemaker, right?
Right, that's right.
Okay. So and I just thought it was really interesting that he was able to capture his entire persona, if you will, in those two words. And that's basically what led us down this path and you creating this activity.
So, so it's been interesting because I've been trying to decide, do I want to change it? Do I want to? So, one of the things I've been doing, I've been reading this book called Building a Story Brand 2.0. And in fact, I was reading it before we got on this call. And I'm reading this book, and in the book, they're talking about your aspirational identity. And the identity is who do you want to see how do you want to see yourself, and how do you want others to see you in the future? And then as I was going through this personal identity activity, that's it. It really is talking about how do you want to be seen and how do you see yourself and how do you want to be seen? So I did it. Um, and the way I did it, because if I create activity, I got to come up with an answer. So what I did, and I'll be honest, it's not an easy activity because there's like 150 and it's divided up into unique attributes and unique essence. So there's like 130 or 40 or 50 unique attributes, and I'm asking you to narrow it down to three.
Right.
And then there's like 83 unique essence, which is basically like your work. And I'm asking you to narrow that down to three. So the way I did it was I narrowed it down to three, and then I asked my wife which of those three fit me best, or which ones fit, which of the three, which one attribute and which one essence fit me best. So the three I came up with was purpose driven, creative, and generous for the attributes, and then catalyst, champion, and content creator for my essence. And then it ended up being purpose driven catalyst. So that's the words that I'm going to use, the phrase I'm going to use to describe how I want to see myself and how I want others to see me. So now you were challenged with this today.
Yes, I was.
And I would love you to describe what this process was for you, what it was like for you as you're going through it. And I know you cheated, so you might as well talk about how you cheated too. So,
But coming up with narrowing it down to three was a tad difficult. So mine ended up being more phrases per se, right, than just the individual attributes. I would say that the the unique attributes were definitely a little more difficult than the essence part. I think I had an easier time with the essence part. But what I ended up coming up with, I had two of them, which were learning centered coach and faith based servant leader. And I think for me, the one that just sticks out the most is the faith based servant leader. That pretty much encapsulates who I am, what I do, and how I want to show up and how I want others to see me.
And, and as a side note, like before we got on this call, we had this conversation
Yes.
and we were talking about, I'm like, really? You're trying to decide between learning and faith-based? Really? Like every conversation we have on a Tuesday is related to something around faith, your faith. And it's like you're asking me which of the two between learning centered and faith based. Your whole life is around faith.
Uh, Only because I do value the learning and the knowledge aspect. So that's why it crept in to the list when I was choosing my words. So that's just having to come up with more than one phrase is why that sort of entered the equation. But yes, I see your point.
So let me ask you this, and we didn't even talk about this. When you think about your top five values, what are your top five values?
Oh well, yeah.
Is
Yes.
faith, is,
It's
religion,
right.
spirituality, or
Spirituality
is
is number
learning?
one, right?
Well, that's right.
Yes. Fitness and health will be number two. And that's interesting because knowledge comes in at number three.
Right. But
Right.
the faith part is number one.
Yes.
So I could understand why you have, two and three, but faith is number one. So, and we didn't even have that conversation. That just hit me as we were talking about this.
Right.
So, so now that you have it, now that, are you going to stick with that? Like, are you just going to say, this is what I'm going to stick with and see where it goes?
I, I think for now I'll stick with it. I don't know that I could see it changing much. I do think I'm very comfortable with that. And that's probably what I would go with for now in the foreseeable future.
Now, here's what's going to be interesting. So now that you have service, you have faith-based servant leader,
Yes.
it will be interesting to see. So, one of the things we're doing with this activity is helping people define their potential opportunities, whether it's a job, entrepreneurship endeavor, volunteer experience, or some other professional activity. It would be interesting to see if when you do that activity, um, where you take, your word and then plug it into AI and see what the AI comes up with when you're coming up with your 10 to 15 um, things to do. Because I wouldn't be shocked, one of them probably would be a pastor, which we know you don't want to do.
No, thank you.
But you've already done workshops around this in churches.
Yes.
And I could see this happening even more now because it's so clear. So now the question is, how do you take this newfound personal identity and then almost market it to the world? I mean,
I think
that's
that's the tricky part, right? Is walking through what that looks like while simultaneously now wanting to help everyone else who crosses your path take this journey and figure out what their personal identity is as well. Because just going through this, Not that I didn't know before, but now you really get the understanding of how important it is to have everyone know that you do have a personal identity, and wouldn't you like to know what it is?
And now one of the other challenges I would throw at you is come up with the specific definitions of faith-based for you and the specific definitions of servant leader. I mean, we have the general definition, but I think it would be interesting for you to define it for yourself. Because once you have that statement, then what we do is construct your mission. We'll call it your catalyst mission statement, but your meaningful work statement, or our friend Lewis Howes calls it your meaningful mission statement. But that word, that identity literally dictates your mission. So for example, when I was doing this activity, my meaningful mission, so, purpose-driven catalyst, but I do know that my focus is on higher education. So imagine doing the purpose-driven catalyst work or being a purpose-driven catalyst and helping faculty, staff, and administrators not only find purpose in their own lives, but give them the tools and the equipment and the resources to help students do the same thing. I would bet when you go through this activity yourself, you know that you will have to do this work in churches, with congregations, with pastors. I mean, I already know that's where you're going. I mean, you started it, but then it just becomes even more definitive and more clear that that's what you're supposed to be doing.
So then my question is, does your personal identity give your mission statement more impact, more meaning,
It would be more juice.
or
Yeah, more juice.
yes,
Yep.
yes, I can see that, right?
Um,
Can someone operate in their mission without knowing their personal identity effectively?
well, we've been doing it for a while, but I don't know if we were able to put words to describe it. But I bet if you do know your personal identity, it makes identifying the mission easier.
Okay,
And it would make more sense. So that's what I would say. Because if you think about the mission, the way we describe mission is, what are your interests? Who do you want to serve? What's the problem you're helping them solve? How do you do it? And what's the end result? And those are the five components. If you know you're a faith-based servant leader, the interest is going to be around, religion, spirituality, the Bible, that kind of stuff.
sure.
And I'm not saying it's going to be, those specific, but it's going to be around those things. The problem you're going to solve is helping people gain clarity about their religious/spiritual beliefs through becoming the best version of themselves, which would be the end result. And how you're
Right.
doing it is through workshops and, trainings and all this other stuff. So it's been happening. Now you just have words to describe it and have it be clearer for you.
Which I think is the great part of the journey, right? Is now can we just see all of the ways in which we're able to help others get to their own personal identity and be able to articulate for themselves now what their mission would be and how they carry that out.
So the question is, how do we start doing that for others? Because that's the key. I mean, it's a new activity. We haven't tried it with many people yet. So I don't know if I want to put it in as a resource yet because we haven't tried it out with many yet.
Right.
So I think one of the things that I'd like to do is do it in a workshop with other people and see what kind of results we get. And then we can distribute it to as many people as possible. Because I do, personally, I think it's a game changer. Um,
Based on what this morning was like for me, I would have to agree. So I'm okay with us going to the lab with it and seeing what results we get.
yeah, and one of the other things we talked about today, imagine taking your personal identity statement and using it to come up with potential jobs and careers and side hustles and businesses and volunteer just from those two words.
Right.
And that to me is the game changer because then it's like, oh, it's clear as day. These are the things, this is the direction I should go. But we're going to test it out first. But we thought it would be fun to talk about um, because it has helped both of us get so clear about what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Um, and and it's interesting on how much you think about, and when we started off this whole this channel in the first place, we talked about in December is when we had these kind of epiphanies on where we want to go. And now we're actually creating the tools that are actually helping us define where we knew we were going, but now we have tools to back it up. And that's been very eye-opening for me, and I'm sure for you as well. So,
It has.
so, um, so yeah, that's today's episode. Is this whole personal credo? I probably will put it in the box. If you have a chance to try it out, what I would ask you to do is do the activity and then post your one unique attribute and your one unique essence in the discussion part because we would really love to know what people come up with. If you're not sure, narrow it down to three of each and ask your friends, ask your partners, ask people who know you which ones seem to describe you best. Because, when you ask me, these are the two I came up with. And I'm like, really? Really? You're asking me which two? And then when we broke it down, it's like, well, this is how we have our conversations. And it was like, all right, it's clear as day. So, so thank you for like, this is not what we were going to do today. So thank you for the suggestion. I'm glad we were able to talk about this because, I was curious as to, well, what's he going to come up with?
So I'm glad we got to discuss this. So it was a great activity, and I needed to go through this.
So, um, so again, I will post it. Um, if you get a chance, try it out. When you try it out, post it, post your statement, your personal identity statement in. But imagine a statement being used to dictate everything you do in the future. Think about how powerful that could be. Um,
Right.
and again, I'm using this is, it could be called personal identity statement. It could also be aspirational identity statement. So think about how do you want to be seen in the future and how do you want to see yourself in the future and how do you want to be seen in the future? So you could use it in that context as well. So so thank you for the idea of this, Ivor, for thinking about doing this as our chat.
Absolutely.
And so we'll have another one, probably around another one of the tools, because we've got there's stuff happening here. that we're going to share more um, about where we're going with this work. So, and we do have 25 in 25. So we're doing 25 episodes between July, June and the end of the year. So we're a third of the way there. So that's exciting in itself. So, all right. Anything else you want to share, or are we good?
We are good. That's all for now.
All right. Well, you all have a great day. We'll see you. Bye.
Bye.